Hey guys, WaifuGate here again. So today we're going to be going over uh, the underrated card of the week. I usually release this video on Wednesdays. It's a weekly thing. I've been having a lot of fun with it, and I also take suggestions for this. So basically, it's a card that's not really considered super meta, and we kind of analyze it in like what types of decks it could go in, why it's good, and why it's kind of underrated. Like, just in general, like usually the reasoning behind it is it's not ran in a lot of lists. But sometimes there are other reasons, like people aren't thinking about it, the meta's shifted, stuff like this. All right. So basically, we just kind of talk about the cards. So this week's card of the week, underrated card of the week, is Tail's End. Now, why is this good right now? We've seen it before in U-White Control, which is what I've been running it in. There's also a deck guide for this if you want to check that out. But, like, why? Why is it good now? And the answer is Nissa is making a comeback. Hydroid Crassus is making a comeback. So what stops both of those cards? This. So Tail's End will stop the triggered ability from Crassus on drawing cards. They will still get the card. It's not like Whirlwind Denial where it denies each step of the card. That's not the case here. This simply stops them from drawing cards, which is usually enough, because usually, like, maybe you have a Glass Casket or like a Shatter, something to deal with the Crassus. Crassus really isn't that big of a deal. It's the fact that they get a creature plus, like, 6 new cards in their hand, and that's impossible to deal with as a control player. There's the whole meme about not countering card draw, but this is one of the cases where it's fine too, because it's not like Chemist's Insight where they're drawing 2, discarding 1, and drawing another 2. It's way different. Crassus is just pure card advantage. So shutting that down is great. And what's better than shutting that down sometimes? The thing that makes the Crassus huge, right? The Nissa. And she's a problem too, because she just, if you have to deal with the board state that she produces, you have to deal with her, otherwise she, threatens to Hydroid Crassus you in the face. And it's just very, very tough. So this card answers both of those things. And then what else are they ramping into with the Nissa mana? With Growth Spiral, with Uro? They're trying to get that fancy new Ugin out, the Eugene, right? As people call them sometimes. So being able to Tail's End this too as well is just nice. Now, what's the counter argument to that? Like, Teferi 3, that stops your counter spells. This can even take care of Teferi 3 in the early game, which is nice too. And then you might be able to use the Neutralize for the Nissa instead, and then maybe dig to find your Tail's End for the Crassus late when it matters. Or maybe by that time you have a Narset. This is like getting a little bit too much into like the U-White stuff. I go over a lot of these details in my U-White best of 1 deck guide type dealio, so I don't want to defer too much to that. I want to keep it to Tail's End. This card can also fit into Sultai ramp. It can fit into Bant ramp to kind of counteract and give you an edge in the mirror, especially if you're doing best of 1. It's nice. Now I think I only have 3 Tail's End, so like you could run something like 2 and then 1 in your sideboard if you're doing like a Wish sideboard with Bant as well. Lots of flexible options for best of 1 right now. Reason why I like best of 1 right now over best of 3 is Tamir Reclamation. Only having to fight off against that deck once is kind of nice. Like if I queue up for best of 3, right, and I go up against Tamir Reclamation and I lose game 1, what are the chances of my next game being Tamir Reclamation? 100%, right? Because I have to sideboard and then play against the same list again. In best of 1, there is at least not a 100% chance that when I queue up for my next match, it's Tamir Reclamation. It's not 100%. I don't know what the math is because I don't dive into the engine to see how many decks are running whatever and this and that. I don't know the exact math, but I know it's not 100%, which is enough for me. Anyway, so like it gives you an edge, especially in best of 1, and maybe even in best of 3, it could be a good card too. I just like it a lot right now because it just counters a lot of the powerful cards. This can also counter, Embercleave. It can counter a Torban. It can counter an Annex. Like, there are lots of cards that this thing hits, man. It's actually pretty okay. And for a meta call, when you don't know exactly what your opponent might be on, and you're like, you're afraid of Nissa, you're afraid of Crassus, it just fills all those holes right now, man. I just love this card, especially in control. It could also be good as a sideboard card in like, Simic Flash or something, or maybe even main deckable in Simic Flash. Like there are lots of, Sultai Flash, etc. Like there are lots of lists that they could just utilize this card, and I just love it right now. I'm definitely going to play it until it rotates, probably, like depending on what types of decks that I'm playing. The great thing about the meta is that like you can just kind of like you can kind of flow and go with it, like you have to be adaptive. And I think right now being adaptive is in part playing this card as well. Like this is part of the plan for me, at least. I like it a lot. It can also counter something like a Fabled Passage, which is hilarious. If your opponent's like low on lands or it's early game and they need something, like they crack this to be able to Mystical Dispute you or something, or to be able to Growth Spiral, and you just stop it, that can stop the Teferi as well. That could very easily mana screw them, especially if they're on 2 lands and they go to crack this for like their green for Omen or something, or for Spiral, and you just stop them. It's great. It's just fantastic. Just very versatile is basically the long and the short of it. Can also stop Yorian's effect too from bringing the permanents back, so they lose them forever. Saw that a lot in the Jeskai Luca days. So I just like it a lot, man, and I recommend like testing it out here and there if you're in blue. So if you guys have any suggestions on the next week's underrated card of the week, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Stop by the stream, say hi, and make a suggestion if you want to. We can talk about it. So appreciate you guys being here. If you don't mind, you can subscribe, you can like the video, whatever you feel is worthy. There'll be an end screen too where you can just click on the subscribe. There's also a button, so leave that, guys, to you, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for chilling out.